September 21st, this is the meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission. We are today both live and virtual. I will start by getting a little speech about that. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify me. I don't see any hands up. Pursuant to Governor Baker's June 16, 2021 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws Section 30A 20 until April 1, 2022, this meeting of the Commission is being conducted both in person and via remote for public participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 508-945-4410, conference ID 849-617-024 hashtag, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Okay, the roll call. Let's just go down the line. Janet.
Here.
Sandy.
Present.
Don.
Present.
Steve.
Present.
Stephanie.
Present.
Here.
Ben. Okay. And Jane, sorry. You're here remotely? You're muted.
I'm here remotely.
There. Good. Our voting, I guess we've got everybody. Well, don't have Frank here. That's the missing one. Sandy, you want to fill in as the alternate then? And,
I do, but I was the alternate last meeting. It's in the minutes.
Oh, well, all right. Then we'll take turns because this is an important meeting. Janet, you will be the voting alternate.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. The first order of business is the minutes from September 7th. They were sent out in our packet. Anyone? Stephanie, do you have a correction?
Yes, page 3, third paragraph, last full line. It says voting aye, voting nay, none, and then it says Aikman Porter. Yeah, we were the negative vote. Catch.
Since the vote shows up as 5-2, would that be, that word none should be eliminated, Christina? Right. Okay. With that, any other corrections? With that correction, do we have a motion to approve?
I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, subject to the correction.
Second.
All right, we need to do a roll call vote. Janet?
Approve.
I approve. Don?
Approve.
Steve?
Approved.
Yes.
Ben?
Approved.
Okay, thank you. The minutes are approved.
Jane,
I'm sorry, Jane.
I can't vote. I was not there.
Okay.
I approve.
Sandy also approves, so it's unanimous. All right. Next order of business, the first one listed on the public hearing, is a change in our regulations, section Roman numeral 7, entitled Review of Demolitions under Chapter 158 of the Town Code, subsection B, which is Determination of Applicability. This has been posted. The change essentially is to add a sentence near the end of the paragraph which states a building permit may not be issued until the determination has been approved by the commission. This was left out previously because it was, we added it because it was unclear of the status of the building permit. So we put that in there just to make it perfectly clear that applicants would have to wait before they could move ahead. until the commission voted. Any questions by the commissioners about what's going on, and anybody have issues with it? Any members of the public have anything to say about this? All right, I would like to hear a motion regarding it.
I move that the commission approve the proposed changes to the Chatham Historical Commission Rules and Regulations, Section 7, review of demolition under Chapter 158 of the Town Code, B, determination of liability, of applicability.
Let me also add, because there was I don't know when this occurred, but in looking at this regulation, I noticed that there were 2 Section A's and 2 Section B's in this portion of the regulations. So we have also changed the following paragraphs after the one we discussed to read C, D, and E.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Aikman.
on page 7, refers to the Old Village Historic District. I think it should be the Old Village National Register District.
Which paragraph are you done?
Under authority,
Yeah, okay.
almost to the bottom of that paragraph.
Yes, okay. I think I absolutely agree with you. We're going to have to, I think, re-advertise and go through that process in order to change it. And well, oh, there's Katie. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that a public, because this is a public hearing, that the public hearing notice should be read at the beginning of the hearing,
Okay.
which is typical, and I'm not sure if that was provided in the clerk of this board's packet. That's typically the clerk that would read a public hearing notice.
I don't have a public hearing notice as such. I've got what was provided in terms of the paragraph that's being modified.
Okay. I think if that would at least, that could be read, I think that would be.
The whole paragraph?
That would probably at least just the area that would be added. But to be safe, you could, if somebody could read the whole paragraph, just from a public hearing notice standpoint, I think that would be beneficial.
I am going to exercise my prerogative and ask the clerk to read the entire paragraph.
Very well. Determination of applicability. The Community Development Department's liaison to the commission shall determine whether or not an applicant's request is subject to review by the commission. In the event that the liaison is uncertain as to whether or not a request should come before the commission, that is, the age of the structure is uncertain, alterations are minor or consist of maintenance or repair, the liaison shall request a determination in writing from the Chatham Historical Commission, chair and vice chair. The chair, excuse me, my glasses get fogged up from the mask. The chair and vice chair, parentheses, clerk, or other members so designated by the chair or vice chair, in parentheses, shall independently inspect the structure and research available information to make such a determination. If after this due diligence, both reviewers agree that the project does not require an application for a full hearing before the commission, the applicant will be so notified in writing by a document signed by the reviewers, and the determination placed on the agenda for the next hearing for ratification by the full commission. The building permit may not be issued until the determination has been approved by the commission. If both reviewers do not agree, the applicant will be advised to file a complete application for a hearing.
To make it formal, let's vote again on Mr. Burlingame's issue now that we have the whole thing in front of us. Do we need another second, Mr. Aikman?
I'll second it.
All right, let's go the other way. Ben, your vote?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Acting Chair, Janet?
Yes.
Okay. I think we've got it this time.
I vote,
Oh, I'm sorry, Jane. Go ahead. You're muted.
yes.
Thank you. That's the public hearing of our portion of our meeting. We have some new business to discuss, which the chairman has reviewed with me. Last session, I was not here for that part of the meeting, but we raised the issue of project oversight by individual commission members. Frank wanted to know if we had a sort of a consensus on doing that. This is for projects that might have some controversy to them or some uncertainness as to the breadth of our orders, and the idea was to assign or ask for a volunteer commissioner to just follow up, visit the properties during the course of the construction so that some things did not, if some things appeared to be beyond the scope of what we had directed, then they could bring that to the attention of the building commissioner. Building commissioner's got plenty of things to do all over town. We don't have quite as many. So is there a consensus on the part of the commissioners that that would be a good thing to do? And the next question would be, would we all agree to volunteer? I think maybe particularly if it's something in one of our neighborhoods that we could just walk by with our dog or else otherwise and have a look. Any thoughts on that from you guys? Steve?
Perhaps we could consider it on a trial basis to see how it works. If we get into a project that's very complex, it's a lot to ask any one individual to do that due diligence. On the other hand, if it's a drive-by situation or a small project, it's something else. And I don't know that it's going to be a regulation of ours. I suspect it's not, and I suspect that it's better that it's not. Because if it's going to be a regulation, I think it needs to be fleshed out by when, how, what kind of responsibility the individual has, when they're to report, what happens if they don't report. Do we leave the building commissioner hanging if he hasn't heard from us or from this representative? I think doing it on an informal basis, at least initially, might be the way to go. That's what I would support.
I think that's fine. I think that's what's been happening, at least in my neighborhood, if there are certain, and that's a National Register district, but people, I or Don, go by because we live there and then bring it to usually Michelle's attention, and she will talk to the building commissioner. But that, yeah, let's see how that works. But I think we might want, or the Chairman Messina might want to be able to say, okay, Steve, that one's up, North Chatham. Would you just have a look?
Okay.
And you would be unofficially,
So you're
Charged.
suggesting that it be pretty casual initially?
right, and no action would be taken by us based on your viewing or whatever, but it would go to the building commissioner to just, so that we've got a little bit of a better hands-on, because these little minor changes take place. There's the one that was on Main Street near Don and I that found out that there were some obvious things that had been changed and some not so obvious things too. So it takes a close look usually to.
I think the chair should make the contractor or the building owner aware of the fact that this is going to happen and who's going to do it, so that if they find me poking around more than I ordinarily would, they'd recognize that I was doing it somehow under the authority of the commission.
Well, that's a good idea. So if that is happening, and it is the sort of project which might be might be useful to have oversight, and the chair would be able to say that at the hearing, so the applicant would know that that Mr. Burlingame may be poking around.
Okay.
Stephanie?
We used to have badges, and we could wear the badge to show people that we were Historic Commission. I don't know if that's still going on or not.
Well, let me say, I don't have one. I don't think they're doing, can you answer that, Katie, whether the police are giving out identification cards?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the IT department is currently in charge of that. I believe it's something that is just starting back up again. I believe we have some new equipment. I can check with them and ask them to provide information to Michelle, and she will provide it then to the commission members.
Okay, that would be good. I did have one when I was on the Conservation Commission, and we were rooting around in people's yards, so it was a good thing to have, and it's an official one. Well, just as an afterthought, I was a worker for the census 11 years ago, and they gave us these little cardboardy, it wasn't even cardboard, it was like a piece of paper, and some of my colleagues were accosted because those aren't real identification cards. You've got to have something better than that. So these do look good. Okay, thank you, Katie, for getting back to us.
Bob,
Ben?
I want to speak against it. I think we're taking something that's already been taken care of and making it complicated. You do get a building permit. You do have a building commissioner who's supposed to make sure that people adhere to it. The only exception that I would see is if somebody does something egregious, agrees to put a one-story addition on top of something that he has no permit for, but I'm sure that the building commissioner would pick that up, or hopefully would. So because of the fact that people have different expertise in this sort of stuff, how are we going to educate them so that there is some level, degree of inspection? Do we inspect all places? Do we wait for a complaint to get an inspection? I mean, you're taking something, I think, that's already been done, and unless, as I say again, unless something egregious is going on, then I think we should skip it, but that's only my opinion.
Okay, there are definitely nuances here, and we don't want to be looked upon as a policing agent, for sure. But Frank hopefully will be listening to what we have to say, and when he comes back, we'll get a handle on what we want to do.
Bob?
It's interesting that you say police, because we're already asking for badges.
Not that kind of badge. Jane, yes,
This is Jane. Can I say something?
of course.
I've been on the commission for a long time, since 2007, and I remember that we've talked about this before, and we thought it was a good idea the first time we thought about it, and I'm always remembering the time when Don Aikman looked out his window and saw a guy, go through the roof of an oyster shack, and then he removed the entire roof. And a work stop order was put on that project. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Sandy?
I agree with Janie, and I'll give you an example. Around the corner, not really around the corner, but in the neighborhood where I live, we approved, they came before us and we gave permission for work to be done on the house. They have since taken the chimney down, and there is a big gaping hole in that roof. And it has poured, as we all recall from last week. But instead of repairing it, they have finally shown up again and dug a hole for the pool in the backyard. My point is that at some point, they'll probably come back before us and say, oh my God, we have mold, we have mildew, we have this, we have that, and we need to take down more or do something else. Come on, guys. And I mentioned this to our chairman 2 weeks ago, to please ask Jay Briggs, our building commissioner, to go out and take a look at this, because we didn't approve, one thing to take it down and take it out, but don't leave the hole so the inside of the building is being destroyed by the weather.
Well, that's a good example of what can go on, but then again,
Exactly.
anybody driving by who would happen to know what had been approved
Yeah.
could do that. It doesn't take a commissioner to bring it to Mr. Briggs' attention, but absent people that are sort of in the know, who would know that there should be, what's the hole in the roof about, so. But,
Okay.
no, but I think it does add to.
I see your point, but
Just having somebody that knows what the order is alerted to have a look is different than just the thought police going out. But Frank asked me to see if there was a consensus, and I think it's clear there isn't. So, Stephanie?
No, I just wanted to show the badge. It is
Okay.
not a cardboard card. It's a regular badge. Yeah.
we went across to the police station.
Yeah, no,
Taken.
I've done that too, yeah. Okay, we'll leave that one for our leader to agree to. We also had a question about some process or lack thereof to, if we had an opinion from an applicant and their engineer builder that a property needed to be torn down because it just wasn't worth fixing up, or it is so moldy or something like that. And these proceedings are, by their nature, somewhat one-sided. They're not like a regular trial where there's a plaintiff and a defendant or somebody suing somebody else and there's another side and they both have lawyers. There's only one side that makes presentations to us. And we may say, well, I kind of disagree with that, but there's no, in my mind, legal basis to disagree because we don't have the professional opinion to counter the professional opinion on the part of the applicant. So we had asked for some input from the town on that, and I will again revert back to my Conservation Commission career, in which the Conservation Commission had authority to have the applicant hire an independent person to evaluate the situation. So that's what we're looking at. We've been talking to Ms. Donovan's office about how we might go about that. The building commissioner himself can certainly go out and look, and he, to some extent, may have the discretion to hire somebody to go out as an independent evaluator. But we want to see if we can flesh that out a little more so that if we were to say, well, we really can't make a determination because we only have heard one side of the process, we're going to ask the building commissioner to give us an independent or a different evaluation. Ben?
Yeah, can I ask a question? When we get this independent evaluation, there are several types of people you can get. You can get a builder who wants a job after they tear the house down. You can get an insurance person who says, well, we're not paying that kind of insurance for this sort of thing. So where do you get it? Should we get an architect? We need somebody with some credentials who is independent and who doesn't really have skin in the game, so to speak. They're just going to say, this is my opinion, and it would cost X to fix up or whatever, but it can be fixed. Because we all know that if you have enough money and enough time, you probably could fix anything, but there is some reasonable things to be done here as far as personal property rights and as far as just plain old financial worth. So I think that we have to be very careful at who we get to be the independent evaluator, because most of the ones that we've gotten so far are builders who look at this place and say, well, it's going to be too hard to rebuild this, or it's cost prohibitive or whatever. So I just wanted to interject that part, because I was the one who, I believe, brought this up several meetings ago when we had an evaluation that was from a builder and seemed to be totally one-sided.
Ben, all good points. I think that obviously what the issue is would determine what type of expertise we're looking for. So whether it's an architect or a builder or a foundation expert or a moving expert or something like that. And I think those probably ought to go, since, well, easy to say, he's not here, go to the building commissioner for some input as to what is it that he thinks that we need to get answered. But, Steve?
As we discuss this further, I think that in my experience, usually a statement from a professional engineer he has the credentials, and if he puts it in writing over his name, it means a lot. And that being the case, maybe that can be produced by the applicant. I mean, if rather than his builder's opinion or his opinion, if he gets a professional engineer to certify, under his license that there are no structural issues, or there are structural issues, we may not need an independent person. If the applicant has provided that information from a professional engineer, then that might be adequate. It might be, I'm not saying that it is, but rather than get this too heavy and too expensive and too many people involved, and delay is so important to so many people that come before us. They've got contracts, they have commitments, they have all kinds of things. And if we say, well, we want to slow this down by talking to the building inspector, and then at our next meeting, we'll discuss what type of credentials an independent engineer or adjudicator might need. And the following meeting, we'll appoint that person, subject to his acceptance, and then 2 months later, he comes back and says, I'm just overwhelmed with work. Now, because we're a little bit too complicated, we've really created a hardship for somebody. Somebody has sold this house subject to such and such. And if they can't sell it until this condition is met in 6 months, it can be a real hardship. So I just think we just ought to approach it carefully and not make it too complex for anybody.
I agree. We need to be careful to not just run this into the ground and nothing happens, Don. Yep, Don. Mr. Aikman.
Has the building inspector opined about this? Because I thought we were just going to ask the building inspector to take a look at an issue if we observed one when we were doing our inspections.
I don't, well, I can't speak to the extent that Mr. Briggs has been involved in this. I guess it may also depend on whether he has the authority to hire an independent professional to review the situation. Ben?
Yeah, I think the important thing here is that the person be independent, not have skin in the game, and we find out on what basis they're doing it. In other words, I agree with Steve in the sense that we don't want to drag it out. However, what we're balancing it is if it's wrong, then we're going to say yes or no to a 180-degree demolition or 180-day demolition delay, so that indeed this may be a faster way to say, and we just want to find out, why are you saying what you're saying? and on what basis? Is it too expensive? Is it too this? Is it too that? And as long as they're independent, and do not have skin in the game, I think it's a good thing to do. I think the critical word in my mind is independent.
Okay, Ms. Donovan.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be beneficial to ask the building commissioner to come to your next meeting to have a further discussion and get his input on what he may think is appropriate moving forward. And I can certainly make that request to him.
Okay, thank you, that'd be great, because that's a missing link at the moment, I think. That's our new business. Old business, basically, looking at this and talking with Mr. Messina, all of these things are sort of on hold. The fine issue is somewhere in process of being reviewed by town council. Demolition by neglect, Stephanie, you seem to have run into a lack of knowledge, but,
No, I've reported this 4 times, so I'd like to see something moving on it.
right,
We checked many places, many towns, other states. There are no demolition by neglect rules except for Orleans.
right.
Orleans is a little wishy-washy, and I spoke to the chairman of it, and he said, gave me specifics of things that we should look for. The physical criteria of maintenance, specific standards, unsafe conditions, what are all these things? What is a minimum standard? So he gave me ideas of things that we need to look at, but I think we need to get a committee now that's going to be changing bylaws and all that. I'm not willing to do that, but I'm willing to work with it.
Okay, and it also, just hearing your list, it seems to involve Mr. Briggs again in terms of some technical issues with that. I will report back to the chair on that, see what he wants to do, recognizing from our experience that if we call something a committee, it's going to have to be open meeting law and all that, so beware. The bylaw changes to enhance historic preservation. Ally is out on maternity leave, so that is on hold until, I'll say December, I'll guess that, somewhere in that range, so we don't have any movement on that. Coast Guard Boathouse is also on hold, and the South Chatham National Register District is somewhere in Massachusetts Historical Commission process, so nothing to report. Going down the list, demolition delays, there's nothing active. There are no administrative reviews. Shell Drive is waiting for both a zoning hearing on October 28th, and I believe there's a planning board subdivision proposal that will be coming up. And the Monomoy Theater is in the waiting stage of the planning board with regard to the housing, or the house issue, the residences, and they're waiting to get that cleared up before they deal with the theater restoration, renovation. And that's it from my point of view. Oh, no, one other thing. The survey update from, for two things that are going on. Updating the survey in general, it was done in 2009. Frank has asked Holly Herbster of PAL to give us an estimate, and it's around $10,000. And then the Nickerson property, making that a National Register candidate, would be around $12,000. So some of either or both of those may end up being a community preservation application on our part, but we will be revisiting that certainly before December, when the applications are due for community preservation, and then Sandy gets to look at it, or not Sandy, Stephanie. All right, anything else? Anything from the public?
As far as, I wanted to just bring up demolition by neglect, because the end of demolition by neglect is when something is condemned as being uninhabitable. And I think that the rules should look toward not having your property pristine necessarily, but keeping it from being a uninhabitable place. And I think that Frank Messina has previous experience from a previous position he held on this, and I think it would, you're right, it being very, very helpful with that. The second thing I wanted to bring up here is this 75-year threshold for acceptance. I think we should consider a sliding scale there. In other words, there's a big difference between something in Riverdale than, say, the house that's across from where I live that was built in 1801. So that somehow we should get, rather than the 75-year threshold, some kind of a sliding scale. And don't ask me how and where you can do this and how it's going to be acceptable, but I wanted to bring it up for thought. And that's all
All
I
right,
have.
that brings to mind, Ben, that the hearing we had recently about a house on Stony Hill Road that was barely 75 years old, and nobody thought it was historically significant. So, but you're right, as times have changed, 75 years old in 1900 meant it was a really old house. Now it can be from the as old as I am, 1950s, and you don't look at that and say that's historic. So. But how you do that is another interesting question, and maybe that's another good research thing that we could cajole somebody into doing.
Bring it up for thought with the troops. I wanted to bring it up for thought with our troops here on how and where we could do this. Do you think it's feasible? Would it be proper, et cetera, et cetera? Because we do say now that some places are historically significant just because they were owned by somebody, or they don't necessarily have to be architecturally significant. And so there's a lot of latitude here, but I think we should put this on because we're going to have a lot of houses that are going to come due with the 75-year.
Well, exactly. We're getting into the post-war period now when a lot was going on, and
So-
they weren't historic, that's for sure.
That threshold is, they may, someplace like, say, Riverdale, that may be historic only in a sense that is, the development is, but not any individual house. It's like, say, looking at Levittown and saying Levittown was historic because it was Levittown, but not because all the houses were special. So there's a lot of stuff to think about here, and I just thought I'd throw that up for people to just think about,
Well, and it would be helpful to know if other towns, in Massachusetts anyway, have addressed that situation and how they did before we start just thinking about things that we'd like to do. So, and whether it's worked, obviously. Yeah. Okay, good idea. Any other business for the good of the cause? Jane, public?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, roll call. Janet?
Agree, yes.
Don?
Yes?
Steve?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
yes.
The chair votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Jane. Your picture wasn't on there. That's why I didn't get you.